This is Narrative Elements Chapter 3, which is going to be by far the longest and most difficult of the Narrative Elements chapters, partly because I have squeezed two things into it. I'm going to talk about symbols specifically and also interpretation more generally. So actually this is going to be Part A, because I'm going to have to take it in at least two chunks. So Chapter 3A, Symbols. Starting when I was in high school, I started to have some serious problems with English class, and then in my early undergraduate years also. I flunked English 101 more than one time. In fact, I think it was 3 tries it took me to get through it. But it wasn't because I didn't like reading. I always loved reading literature, but what I hated was being forced to interpret what I read using some kind of public conversational style that was never fully explained to me overtly, and that I didn't even completely agree with. I had considerable skeptical resistance to this very idea of interpretation that was being pushed on me. And in fact, those people who major in English are precisely those ones who intuitively take to this style of interpretation, and they don't have to have it explained to them, and when they become professors themselves, it doesn't occur to them that it needs explaining to anybody else. It's just like breathing air, right? Nobody needs training for that. Well, I am here to tell you that it is possible to acquire these interpretive skills later in life, even if you haven't had good early experiences with them. I'm living proof of it. One of the things I hated most in English class would be when the teacher would say something like, "There are no right or wrong answers." They never said that kind of thing in math class. In math, I knew there were right answers, and I knew how to get them. Yeah, English teacher, if there are no right or wrong answers, how come everybody's not getting the same grade? And just what exactly are you teaching anyway? If I had to pick one single literary element to represent or stand in for, or you might even say symbolize, the discomfort that I had with English classes in high school, it would be symbolism itself. Particularly in poetry, although not only there. I would be confronted with a poem sometimes and asked to say something about what it meant, and it would be a poem that I couldn't even understand. Because the writing was so weird, because the author was writing it weird on purpose. And I was tempted to think the whole thing was just a con game. The poem didn't really mean anything. The poet is just counting on people's gullibility. You know that Hans Christian Andersen story, The Emperor's New Clothes, where the tailors sell the emperor on this idea that they've made an outfit out of cloth, which the cloth is made out of thread that is so fine that you can't even see it unless you're an intelligent person. So the cloth would be invisible to anybody not intelligent. So of course everybody pretends that they can see it, but in reality there is no such thread, no such cloth, and the emperor is parading around naked. And I thought maybe that's what poetry is. Everybody's just faking it. First the author, then the readers. Because why else would you write like that? All that hinting around and making everything mysterious instead of just saying what you mean. And I thought maybe the teachers, when they interpreted the literature, they were over-interpreting, reading symbolism into it that wasn't really there. Who said those extra meanings were actually there at all, other than them? They didn't have any way to prove it. In math, you can demonstrate that your answer is the right answer. So the teachers were using this "there are no right or wrong answers" thing to cover their own naked behinds, too. Is what I thought. Maybe. Because I had to think that. Because the only other alternative would be to think, yeah, there really is some kind of cloth that only intelligent people can see, and I wasn't good enough to see it. And I wavered back and forth between those two different ideas. Con game, I'm inadequate, and I never could quite decide between the two of them. And I kind of figured, even though that I loved reading, I was going to have to grow up to be a scientist or a mathematician or something like that, something else that was extremely precision-oriented, just to get away from the terrible doubts of English class. However, I now know that it can be done. It took a long time before I figured out how to handle myself in the interpretive arena, but now I know how to do it, and I can teach you how to do it too, if you want to learn. Let me start with a very rough definition of symbol. This is when something in a literary work stands for something else besides what it is literally. There's some extra meaning packed onto it somehow. Usually a symbol is an object, though it doesn't strictly have to be. It could be an action or something abstract. And the reader hopefully either intellectually figures out what that extra meaning is, or maybe not. Maybe they just sort of take it in subliminally, and it enhances their reading experience unconsciously without even them having to think about it. Example. The gun in this story is not just a gun. It also stands for a character's idea of masculinity, what he thinks it means to be a man. Now, because literature is not algebra, once you've worked out what the gun means, that doesn't mean the author can't turn it around and use it to mean something else at the very same time. Even something opposite of the first thing. In algebra, that doesn't happen. If you know x equals 3, then you also know that x is not equal to 1, 2, 4, 0, negative 3, and an infinite number of other things. But in literature, symbols have way more wiggle room. I'm imagining this story where a character's gun symbolizes masculinity to him, and that's why he cherishes it. And now I'm imagining that the author eventually makes you see that his attachment to the gun is connected to this person's feelings of impotence and powerlessness, the exact opposite of manhood as he sees it. So that's two contradictory associations, and even more can be associated with the very same object in a story. In Moby Dick, it's very clear that we're not supposed to think of the whale just as a regular old whale. Although it is a whale, literally, it. On the literal level, in this book, all the whales are big, powerful, dangerous animals, as well as potential economic resources. You can catch them and harvest them for sources of commodities like whale oil. And the white whale, Moby Dick, it's that too. But to Captain Ahab, the white whale has the extra meaning that it's a specific old enemy. It's the creature that crippled him, on purpose, he thinks. And he's going after this old enemy to defeat it. So there's this extra emotional significance the creature has for him, but over time, not just for that particular character, but the white whale takes on more and more and more extra significance for the entire book. But just like theme, symbols don't come with their labels attached. Does the whale stand for nature, evil, an impossible, hopeless goal? Without knowing what the whale means, it's hard to say whether Ahab should be pursuing it or not, or who we're supposed to root for, him or it. And I don't believe Herman Melville, the author, wanted us to settle on a single meaning for the whale. Okay, I have for you a couple more examples of symbolism. For instance, there's a comic I frequently use in class, 2 Questions by Linda Berry. Very symbol-rich piece, fun to read it and look for extra meanings in the words and pictures of it. If you Google this, you'll be able to find at least a few images from it, and also you can easily get it on interlibrary loan. It was published in Best American Comics of 2006. Moby Dick is at the library, obviously, but that might be a bigger reading investment than you want to make. A good choice for right now is Young Goodman Brown by Nathaniel Hawthorne, because you can Google up the whole text. It's old enough, it's in the public domain. You could pause the video right now, go and read the whole thing, and then come back. I will wait while you do that. Okay, ready? After 2 centuries, people are still arguing about exactly what Hawthorne wanted us to think. Let's talk about the forest. The forest is clearly associated with transgression of social norms. The main character is taking a walk on the wild side when he goes there. And he at least believes that the forest is a place where wicked people go to do wicked, non-Christian things. He walked away from his wife in order to go there. She begged him not to. He walked away from the town, where he thought he understood exactly who were the righteous people and who were the delinquents and drunkards and people of loose morals. But it's still not totally clear whether Hawthorne thought people should always stay out of the forest, in the sense of sticking to the rules of good and bad behavior that your society understands, or whether he thought maybe nobody can help going into the forest sometime or other. Taking a walk on the wild side is our human nature. It's built into us. That's the way all of us are. Whether or not that might be a deplorable thing. Or maybe whether Hawthorne actually thought it's a good thing for us to go into the forest, for us to probe beyond the moral code that we happen to be brought up with. And then the wife named Faith. Obviously this name means something. In real life, a woman could be named Faith. That doesn't have to mean anything. It might say something about what her parents hoped for her, but it doesn't say anything about her actual personality. But in fiction, the author had total freedom to choose all the names and invent the personalities. So names of characters can be used to sneak in symbolic meaning. The pretty, young, sweet wife named Faith brings up the idea of faith in a variety of different senses. There's the Puritan religious faith that both of the Browns and the other townspeople subscribe to, or that some of the people in the town, or maybe a whole lot of them, are secretly rejecting by worshiping the devil. There's also the idea of faith in a sexual sense, whether Mr. Brown is being sexually faithful to his wife, or whether he can trust her to be faithful, either to him or to their religion. Should Mr. Brown have faith in his wife Faith? If faith in general, if what it is, if how we define it is a conviction or a confidence that some people have that doesn't depend on absolute proof, is that in itself a good thing to have? Maybe. Sometimes. It depends. Okay. Here's the Linda Berry bibliographic information. I'm going to end this segment here and pick it up in the next one.